Conor O'Neill here from Everyday Athlete, where we work with everyday athletes who want to pursue their athletic goals in endurance running, strength training, physique change, and sport. In this podcast, my guests and I discuss principles, strategies, and stories that may help you in pursuit of your own athletic goals and in your life outside of that too. When we were growing up, my impression of you as a kid and even in the teenage years was very much a sport orientated young fella. Like when I think of you as a young lad, I'm thinking football, GAA, golf, soccer, and usually the one within the teams that was, the scorer or the first one picked and stuff like that. And I'm wondering, when you think about yourself as a young fella, do you think of yourself like that, or do you have a different impression of you as a child?
No, I think that's probably the thing that's probably a common theme throughout our lives, and it's something that threads through into like life and business and stuff as well. Is that you kind of see everything through a sporting lens, in that the skills you can kind of learn within a sport can like transfer over into business, life, everything else. But as far as me personally, it's like that's all I knew and all we knew. And it was probably the thing I just dove into because it was something that I was good at. So yeah, like I probably would have seen myself as like, football was your whole identity. And it was probably the first, as I said, like the first thing we actually knew about. And I didn't think there was anything else outside of sport. But yeah, within that, I would probably say, like you mentioned, it was like I would have been the first one picked in school for like competitions or going to represent the school somewhere else or something. And I think for me, the way I saw myself and probably still do see myself is the competitiveness. I think I was very competitive, and obviously that's something that you need in sport. And probably again we'll probably touch on this later on as well, but like into business and stuff as well. And then after I kind of stopped playing football for a while, I think that was something that I missed, or was missing from my life, was that like competitive edge that I had. And I think that's probably why I got so good and was picked. And maybe you saw me as like the talented person, or the person who was the scorer and stuff, is because I always wanted to get better, and I like selfishly wanted to be better than everybody else. And that's probably like a naive, immature way of looking at it, but that's kind of, I feel like, how I got to where I was with it.
Interesting. So first, the second thing that I'd written down about that was about the competitive aspect. When I was thinking about chatting with you today, because I remember times where we would have been out playing golf, and it would have been the two of us just during the summer, out more or less every day playing golf, and I would have been doing it too, but you more so of hit a bad shot and immediately put down another golf ball and hit another one, and just keep putting down new golf balls until you got it right. And probably not counting those as actual strokes when it was the two of us just playing. But that competitive and I suppose aggression and anger maybe that sometimes came along with that was also something I remember, and that bit of tenacity with it. And I remember that then carrying a little bit more into later years, where there was training sessions when we were playing for the minor teams out across, and I remember a few sessions the minor team trained with the senior team out in one of the forest parks, can't remember, maybe Gosford Forest, and me and you were making sure we were at the top of those runs with the senior players. And I actually remember them bumping into one of the senior players then a few years later, and I'd forgotten all about it, and it was him that was telling me. He said, I remember that session where you and Liam were up the front, and to be honest, I tried to break his, and just kept going. So that was probably partly, I suppose, a good example of the competitiveness that you and I both had, and just I suppose how drawn we were to pushing ourselves within the sport and context. So that competitiveness, I think has, and that intensity, I think to a certain extent has probably been something that I would associate less with you now. Is that something that you have worked on taking down a notch or getting under control? Um, or has it naturally come about with age? And along with that, do you feel like you can turn that on when needed?
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely like as you mature and stuff as well, it's probably something that you do tone down a wee bit, but I probably went too far the other way in that like I when I stopped playing sport, I was like, what else is there to do, and not being competitive in anything really. Um, but yeah, I think from like you mentioned there, when we were back training, doing the runs with, people older than us and everything else, I don't really know where the competitiveness came from. Um, but I think it was always something that we had. It might have been just because, sibling rivalry and we were kind of competing, secretly competing against each other first and foremost, and then everybody else was just like a knock-on effect of that. Um, but I still consider myself a competitive person, but I think before, when I was younger and like a little bit immature, it was competitiveness to beat everybody else, and so everybody else had to lose. And like now, it's just like competitiveness against myself and holding myself to a certain standard, not at the expense of anybody else, but for me to just get better at what I'm doing, and reach new levels just to see what I'm capable of. So I think that's probably been the main switch, is that I can still be competitive, but it doesn't have to come at the expense of anybody else. It's more so to do with a journey within yourself to get better and raise your own standards. But beforehand, it was basically just something that I was like, no, I want to beat everybody else just to show that I'm the I'm the best essentially. Um, but I think as well, it was always a good way for us, if training with other people. They kind of say if you want to run faster, run with people who are faster than you. And I think by doing that and having the intention to be like, just because they're older, stronger, fitter, doesn't mean that I can't at least try and keep up with them. And I think almost that like naive belief that you could, um, can bring you a lot further than say someone who takes the approach or the assumption that because they're more experienced or older, um, that there's no way I'm going to be able to keep up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's an interesting distinction between taking away that level of competitiveness versus using it when it's appropriate. I I thought of an idea around that concept a while ago, to not shun away from being competitive, but to be competitive when being competitive will make the experience better. So, for example, when or if and when I'm playing board games, for example, I would be super competitive because it makes the experience of the board game a lot more enjoyable when playing within the rules. But if it is in the context of wanting to be the loudest within a conversation or wanting to be, the heard the most within a conversation, or if it is in a business sense where you're competing with people, with peers, or where you're trying to make the most money or have the biggest following or whatever else, I don't think I think it decreases the enjoyability of the experience for all involved and the fulfillment that you get from that experience. So I think there are things where competitiveness is a good thing to have, and that may also extend to the likes of training, where being competitive within a session is allowing both people to lift heavier, run faster, run further, and benefit both people or whatever amount of people are involved, which is an interesting uh, distinction between the two. Um, when I think about then towards that, as we came into more senior sport, towards 17, 18, age 17, 18, 19, I feel like I got quite a bit more even into it and lent into it at that stage, where I feel you potentially started at that point to lean out a wee bit, uh, and ended up at some point. I can't remember. Maybe you can tell me at some point finishing up sport. I can't remember what age. Um, but at that point, when you think about that, when and why did you finish up sport?
Um, I think maybe it started whenever probably I went to uni in Belfast. And the commitments and stuff. Of traveling up and down. But also not probably not me not being at the standard that you needed to be to play at the level that our club demands. Because it is such a successful club, and that's always to be respected, and people deserve their place based on the effort that they put in and the talent and stuff that they have. And I was kind of, I think you touched on this as well. It was like when to quit, like knowing when to quit. I think that was something that you put out a while back that definitely uh pulled on something within a lot of lads. It got a lot of attention, and probably something that pulled on my attention as well. And that, like, if you know within yourself that you don't, not that you don't have what it takes, but if inside you're not willing to make the commitment to whatever training demands is there, whatever issues you have with certain teammates, if you're not willing to put those aside for the team, if you're not willing to sit on the bench for a while until you get your chance, or whatever else that comes with it, like, don't do it, because you're probably bringing the team down. You're probably not getting the best out of yourself, and that time could be spent on something else. Whereas, if you're 100% willing to make that commitment, go all in and like do it, like give it everything you have. And that was probably like I suppose what would you say, a crossroads for me and you, where you probably decided, right, I'm going to make this commitment at least for a couple of years. And I was like, okay, I'm probably not willing to do that. So I was like, right, let me just do what I'm doing up in Belfast here, and like try and go a different direction. And it wasn't within sport; it was more so to find out more about myself and the interests that I had in certain hobbies. And I suppose more so in business and self development. For me, that was probably where I wanted to go. I wanted to understand a wee bit more um about myself, and that was probably why I was like, right, I don't think I wanna continue probably just living at home as well, like trying to expand the kind of people I want to chat to as well. That was probably one of the main reasons. Um, but I think as a result of that, I definitely, you probably had this as well. There was definitely times where I missed it. Be having dreams of of training sessions, which is weird. It's kind of like a a weird dream to have, of like punishing training sessions. But it's like those are the kind of things that you remember, and the things that you miss, because it was something that um had a lot of meaning. It had a lot of meaning. It was such an integral part of my life for so long. Um, and again, back to kind of what you have been had talked about and posted about as well, is that like the what comes after that, what comes after the you leaving sport. Where do you go with when it's such a big part of your identity?
Yeah, the identity is such an important piece of that. Even when you're talking about probably not the main reason being, but one of the reasons potentially for leaving the sport being allowing you to look at other areas of yourself and to try different things, potentially whether in the back of your head, whether consciously or subconsciously, continuing to try and be the GA lad, the footballer, could have potentially felt like it was holding you back from exploring some of those other areas, whether that be because if you were going and, you know, exploring fashion or coffee or something like that, things that, especially whatever 10 years ago, were kind of looked at as uh, more feminine or less footballer related. I think they've changed a lot since, but in the back of your head, the idea might have been that when I'm going back to training after having done these things, or even posted about them on social media or something like that, the idea was you're going back to the change room to probably get slagged about it, to probably get discouraged from doing it some way. And especially when you're a bit younger and have less confidence, that can play a big role in sort of potentially hold you back from just even explore those other areas and trying different things. Uh, is that something you probably, well, firstly, is that something you felt? But, and yeah, I want to explore a couple of other areas of the athlete identity, but do you think that's close to home, or do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, I like 100%. Like, you know, when you grow up where we grew up, it's kind of football is all you know. And I think once I sort of, I suppose, left home, is that you kind of by default you kind of get exposed to different things and different options, and you see different people wearing different things or trying different things or working in different places. And I see myself as a curious person. And that like different things kind of spark my curiosity. And like, yeah, as you mentioned, like you go home and people see you talking about something or doing something on social media or wearing a different thing, and it's something different that they've never seen before, and naturally you're going to get some flack for it, which is fair enough. I think we both notice there's like a uh, an unspoken agreement of like you're going to get slagged no matter what about something, and that's part of team building. That's part of growing up. That's part of your identity building as well. Is that uh, the slagging you get when you arrive into the change rooms, it's like if you can take it, then in a weird way, people will like you more, or they they feel like they can depend on you more, because it's like we're testing you, we're testing your mental fortitude, all that sort of stuff. Um, but if you can't take a slagging, like what are you gonna do when someone tries to get into your head on the pitch? Like that's the test. You have to pass that test initially. And I feel like I did for a while, and I was like, that's fine. Like this is part and parcel of whatever team you're going to be on, or wherever you're going to go, whatever workplace you're going to be in. There's always going to be that. But again, I probably came to a point where I was like, okay, this doesn't feel worth it anymore. I was just like, it's kind of affecting me too much, that it's holding me back from actually going all in to who I am as a person, and the kind of things that I want to explore within myself, and whatever other interests I want to do. Yourself, like if you're spending time around people who aren't necessarily encouraging what you're doing, it's eventually going to wear you down. You could be the most mentally disciplined person in the world, but if you're constantly getting poked and jabbed, it's going to affect you in some sort of way. Um, and it's not to say I hold any resentment over anybody for those kind of things. It's just what it is. It's kind of helped me get clarity on who I am as a person and the kind of things I like to do. So I think, yeah, that was probably the best move for me at that stage. Like,
I came to a similar point, not for the same reasons as you talked about necessarily, but more so just from a time slash travel slash career slash study point of view, where I was trying to, get this business off the ground, study full time, work full time, and the idea of traveling up and down, 45 minutes each way to training 3 or 4 times a week just wasn't going to happen. Something had to give. But I think it's something that a lot of people grapple with, because sport, especially, is something that people have throughout their life, that they enjoy, that they get a lot of gratification from and praise from, and that they build a lot of their identity around, particularly if you're decent at it, and spend a lot of time doing it throughout childhood, teenage years. It gets to a point for a lot of people within their 20s, where they are asking themselves, is it worth the commitment? Is it worth the effort? Is it worth the time? And for some people it is, for some people it isn't. And everyone has their decision to make at that point. But ultimately, at some point, everyone finishes up, whether it's age that ends up being the thing that makes that decision, or whether it's something earlier on. But everyone gets to that stage, and grappling with that identity they used to have is something that a lot of people struggle with. And I know that in the phase shortly after you finish in sport, you probably didn't do much training or much thinking about your nutrition, or that wasn't a part of your daily or weekly priorities, I think, for a while. And then you did get back into it in probably more recent years, and I think when you started getting back into the gym and training properly, and I was, obviously from my point of view, being in the line of work, and my my priority on fitness, health, training, all that stuff, I was really excited and glad to see you back doing that because I knew probably it was something that you
Mm.
probably needed at that time, but also just from the point of view of I was excited to be able to just have another thing to be able to relate and to relate to you and talk about. Um, but what was that interim period like in terms of were you doing much training? Were you doing a little bit ad hoc training here and there? And then that into getting back into it.
Yeah.
That came,
So probably after, what would you say, after football, in between, it was like going to the gym maybe three, 4 times a week, but no specific. I had plans. It was like online sort of online courses and stuff that I would have taken from maybe someone that I didn't really know,
okay,
and I would be, yeah,
King
Greg,
Cody.
Greg O'Gallagher. Um,
I do.
I was
I
kind of
remember
like,
now.
okay, I had a plan in place. Like I knew I had enough knowledge to know that I needed some sort of structure to it. Um, but I kind of came into it with no idea of what intensity I should be going at, or what was hard, like what was going to build muscle, what was going to lose fat, what was going to get me to where I wanted to go. I didn't really have an end goal with it, or a reason for doing it as such, um, or nothing really to work towards. So therefore, and because I was doing it by myself, essentially, at that time, there's no real accountability of anybody but yourself, and I suppose at that time I hadn't built the trust in myself to go hard at it and to come into the gym and say like, okay, today if it gets hard, we know what we have to do. I hadn't built that trust and built that evidence that I suppose, the kind of person to push themselves hard in the gym. I hadn't, that's a new identity I suppose that I've built over the last couple of years, is that I'm now a person that can do it by themselves. Um, Even though I still have a coach and a better gym setup and all that sort of stuff, but if needs be, I can go in by myself and do it. Um, but anyway, in between, yeah, when I was doing it by myself, that was probably the main thing where there was no accountability on my end, but there was also no incentive to really push myself, no goal to work towards, and then kind of letting yourself off the hook more often than not, which then plays into this idea that I have kind of been thinking about the last while, is that like you're building an identity for yourself whether you know it or not. Whether you're consciously doing it or subconsciously. It's like every decision you're making is you building the identity for yourself. So if you're deciding to stop a rep short, if you're deciding to, not do the core exercises at the end of the workout, or, just go 80 kilos today, even though you did 90 last week, but you're feeling a wee bit, you don't really know if you can hit it this week. It's those kind of wee choices that you make. Is like where those kind of choices show up in other aspects of your life, that you don't make the decision to uh you make the decision to eat a takeaway instead of like cooking food that you have there in the fridge already. All these wee things add up, and then that's your kind of identity. You're the person who cuts corners. You're the person who stops short. And that was probably in that interim period. That was probably something that I had to deal with as well for myself. Is like, how have I become this person who now stops short and like has nothing to work towards, from going to like what I consider to be one of the most competitive people in in every aspect of life, to like this person who just doesn't, have anything to work towards now. Um, and then like that in itself is like a journey, but I don't. I think coming, I suppose you kind of just have to work yourself out of that by doing small things over and over again, having those periods of like self reflection and all that sort of stuff. That all helps. Um, but I think the main thing for me was deciding to do something different and actually invest financially into a coach again. Um, and this is probably something you'll know with lads who invest into your coaching and stuff, is that like they'll see completely different results than doing it by themselves, because they've decided to invest financially, but they're also invested emotionally, but they also have a plan to work towards and someone to keep them accountable. And that was probably the change for me when I came across the gym I'm in now, um, which is Hench in Belfast. Probably a lot of the guys following might know, um, which is like more focused on, it's like small group personal training, but everybody has their own individualized plan. Their own coach and stuff as well. So it was a good balance for me of having the accountability of a coach, but also having the freedom to kind of do it yourself as well, and having that structured plan in place. So that's kind of where, that's probably like 3 years now, that I've started taking it seriously again. And like the change from the last 3 years and everything, like obviously there's more to it than just going back to the gym and having a plan to work towards that has had the effect on my life over the last 3 years. But like everything, like literally everything's better. Everything's better from having that competitive edge back in myself of like trying to go one rep more, trying to, hit PBs every week. And, I suppose having that structure to your week again, gives you the energy to go into, your work a little bit deeper. And, doing the extra hour of work is now the identity. Doing the extra rep is now the identity. How you show up, in your relationship, for your family, all those kind of things, you then become that person versus the person before, who was the one who stopped short and took shortcuts and, made the, suppose not going to say wrong choices, but like suboptimal choices, I suppose, in terms of nutrition, and structure and everything else.
Yeah, I think it's like outside of the physical benefits that you'll get in terms of, better energy and better health and actually, being able to do more because you have the energy to do the stuff. Uh, there's so much, and we talk about this a lot. There's so much carryover on the psychology side and the mental side of what pushing yourself in training, and making the right decisions on a consistent basis give you. I think one big aspect of it is the self-talk, because I've put posts about this as well and talked about it within the program. But the the self-talk when you're making those tough decisions in life or business or work or with family or whatever else it is, it's the same. It's almost the same phrases, the same sentences, the same struggles that you're having in your head when it comes to that last rep, when it comes to actually getting out of bed to do the session, when it comes to pushing yourself to keep running for that last second of the rep instead of falling short. It's when you think about what you're saying to yourself within those, it's things like, I'll maybe leave this rep short. Who else would know that I've left it short? Well, that's the exact same thing you might say if you leave work early, or you go and scroll on social media instead of doing the task you set out. You could say to yourself, "Oh, no one will know, it'll be all right." Or, not getting up for the session and saying, "I'll do it tomorrow" instead. It's the exact same thing with a work task or with having a conversation with someone that you need to have or whatever else. And I think just that practice, because you don't get enough time to practice those things in real life, because a lot of those things are once in a blue moon that those type of things will happen. But if you're able to have a consistent training schedule where you're pushing yourself consistently, you're getting that practice in regularly, so that every time that thought comes into your head of I'll leave it a rep short today, or I'll just take it a bit easier on myself today. You're practicing that consistently and getting over that hurdle every time. You're getting more practice at it, and the automatic conversation as soon as you hear yourself saying in everyday life, "I'll do it tomorrow. I'll get back on track the next day. I'll take the easy route," whatever it is. It's more automatic then that you go to the better option with that. That's what I think with the self-talk side of things and the conversations that you end up having in your head and how that transfers over, as well as the idea that when you're putting in work consistently, you see the payoff with training. You can then transfer those ideas into everyday life as well. And you start to think about those things, think about those concepts, and you start to maybe put a similar framework in with what you're doing with work. That, if I show up every day and I do X amount of posts on social media, or I have X amount of chats, it's like, reps, 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 reps. I have the faith that that'll add up over time in the same way a training program result would.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it kind of goes back to that what I was saying about earlier is like the identity. So it's like you, whenever a certain situation comes up and you have a decision to make, you kind of build the evidence off your past decisions. You know, whatever evidence you have in the current situation. Let's say, you know, you have another set to do, and the last time this happened, you didn't do it. So therefore, the evidence that you have of yourself in these kind of situations is that you don't do the extra set. And so, like to your point, there is like when this situation occurs and you make the choice that, oh no, I did that extra set and I felt better, and then I also got to work straight away instead of going on my phone. And then I also did another task that I was putting off because I made that choice. And so therefore the next time that comes up, I can make the choice again because I now have the evidence to back up that like in this situation, I know the conversation that's going to happen in my head now. I know this voice is going to say that, oh no, like, you know, you need to get back home and, you know, you have no time, blah, blah, blah. But this voice is going to say like, you know how you feel when you do this extra set. And you know how you're going to feel for the rest of the day and the knock-on effect it's going to have. And then, yeah, as you say, it's just a compound effect of like stacking those wee bricks each time the situation comes up. And the knock-on effect and the bleed-in it has to every other aspect of your life is profound. Like it's really it's crazy because it's easy in a way when you just have to you just have to do the work, but you know the amount of convincing you have to do yourself to get there is the tough part, I think.
Simple but not easy. Straightforward but difficult to what would you say? Difficult to implement. A few questions that are not necessarily quick fire, but more straightforward, I suppose. What is your current training look like on a weekly basis?
Current training at the minute. So just starting back in, obviously, as you know, we had the baby a couple of months ago, so obviously things haven't been optimal in terms of sleep. Nutrition has been whatever you can get into you as much as possible at whatever time. But now we're kind of finding like, okay, there's a couple of months in now, we're finding patterns and different things. So starting a new program next week. The last couple of weeks I've been doing 3 strength sessions with a bit of accessory exercises on the end. And then daily walks, so like average like 7,000 steps a week to kind of just keep that side of things taken over. But from now I'm doing from next week, sorry, I'm doing 3 strength sessions, just going back to basics, like reps at 3 for 3 sets of the sort of 3 main compound lifts of deadlift, squat, bench press, aiming to get up over double body weight in the squat, and probably over double body weight in the deadlift as well, and then going for a 100 kilo bench as well over the next 6 to 8 weeks with those, and then adding some cardio in at the end to keep the cardiovascular system in check, because coming 30 in September, and it's like after you get to a certain age, you kind of realize you haven't been out of breath for a couple of years. So I think that's going to be one of the things that I'm going to focus on probably moving forward, just in general, is like staying lean. I think it's when you get to a certain age, it's just so easy to kind of go out the ways and get the love handles coming along insidiously, even though you think you're still 20 and you can do whatever you want and eat whatever you want and it won't happen. But that's going to be the plan. Doing probably the cardio will probably involve like assault bikes, rowing, and then maybe throw in a run down the line at some stage as well, and then keeping up with daily steps and stuff. But getting the 3 main sessions in on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday is just the non-negotiable for me at the minute.
Yes, big numbers. That was like a bunch of strength phase last year or maybe the year before, and those were the numbers I'd really pushed to hit. So they got the 100 kg bench and double body weight No, I'm going to get I got the double body weight deadlift and somewhere slightly below that with the squat. But big numbers like to be aiming for, for as I would say an everyday athlete.
Mm.
So to have those ambitious goals to work toward is nice. And for some reason, the round figures always help. 100 kg, double body weight, always helps for some
Yeah.
reason. And I went so in nutrition. I'm interested because obviously my background, well, my initial background getting into fitness and all that was with nutrition. And I can get quite in the weeds and in depth with a lot of stuff. But I'm interested to hear from someone who has a good knowledge of that sort of stuff, but it isn't, obviously in that line of work as yourself. How do you view nutrition now in terms of what are your priorities to get in? You know, meal outlines you have? What are you thinking about when you're putting a meal together? How are you thinking about eating too much versus too little? Supplements. How do you think about nutrition at the minute?
Yeah, like I always lean more towards like convenience. Like I don't, in a way, I don't like eating. I think I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I don't like spending time eating. I love food, but I don't like spending time eating during the day and stuff. I sometimes find it's like see it as like an interruption for some reason. But try to go like 2-3 meals a day. I know I'm probably better spreading that out over four, but for some reason I just can't seem to get those in. But simply in the mornings I would have like double scoop of protein and oats, with fruit blended up into a smoothie. Really, really like simple. Just to get those like calories earlier on in the day. So like I probably have the opposite problem to what a lot of guys you would work with, or I suppose a lot of guys in general would have, is that like it's not that I eat too much, it's probably I don't eat enough to get to where I want to and build the muscle that I want to. Um so I think finding ways to get the calories in earlier in the day is my big thing. And keeping the protein high and stuff as well. So that's probably going to be breakfast for the next while. Lunch wise, again, convenience. I do a lot of meal prep stuff, like ordering it in the Slim's Healthy Kitchen stuff for dinner or for lunch, and prep pots and stuff as well, where you have the calories on the tub and the protein and stuff. So I know exactly what I'm getting each day, and it's convenient as well to grab lunch, put it in the microwave, and then it'll be like a dinner in the evening with maybe like a cheeky Magnum or something afterwards. But in terms of calorie cutting and stuff, I haven't really been focusing on that too much over the last while. I tend to eat pretty much the same thing for like 6 to 12 months at a time. So like tracking it for a couple of weeks, see if body weight is going up or down, and then adding or taking away as needed. But again, it sometimes just gets once I know kind of what I'm eating, I know I have a rough idea of doing it for a while. Um, what calories are kind of coming in as well. But again, I probably need to dial that in a wee bit if I wanted to um really get focused on it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing as well, and that your ability to now be a little bit more casual with things has probably come from previously having tracked and having had a good idea of what the calories and the macros look like um, for a certain meal or for a certain set of meals. And that allows you to then transition to less tracking, but still knowing that you're in a good ballpark and just sort of tracking your weight, feeling the same how you're feeling energy wise, hunger wise, and then allowing yourself that if you ever wanted to really dial things in, say for a body composition goal or a performance goal or something like that, you have the ability to do that, and you're working from a really solid base where it'd just be a few variables that would change. Um, and then I suppose on the more lifestyle say slash psychology side of things, maybe related to training and or not related to training, are there any habits that you would implement on, say, a daily or weekly basis to keep things right in terms of maybe your psychology or in terms of just your overall health to do these lifestyle habits?
Um, say like as boring as it sounds, I would say sleep is the big one. Trying to get to bed on time. I love getting up early, getting up, 5-6 o'clock in the morning, getting the session done straight away. So the habit is just like having the clothes sitting out, ready to go in the morning, and getting up and doing it straight away. That for me, that tends to work more so than leaving it to the afternoon. Leaving your session to the afternoon because there's less room for negotiation. You know, uh, I think the longer I leave it during the day, the more opportunity I have to say like, oh no, I'll leave it till tomorrow. Da, 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 da. But if it's the first thing that I'm doing, I know it's done. So the habit being getting the sessions, booking the sessions for first thing in the morning, getting that out of the way. And obviously on top of that, making sure I'm getting to bed on time so I actually have the energy to do it. In terms of psychology and stuff as well, probably just a simple one I've been doing over the last while is instead of listening to music, listen to some sort of like podcast instead. Just whatever I'm thinking about, whether it's business, marketing, health, mindset, something like that, something that I can get in the frame of mind for productivity, I suppose. But it's probably like, yeah, since having the baby, it's been a different shift. I used to spend a lot of time reading, journaling, doing whatever else, more in routine, but it hasn't really been that. I haven't really probably haven't had the desire or maybe the need for that deep self-reflection sort of stuff right now. Probably will come back at a certain time, but as you know, it's like you get a reminder every morning of your purpose and everything else. So there's very little that you really need to self-reflect on in terms of like what's your purpose in this life, what are you doing? That a lot of that work has been done beforehand, and it's obviously going to continue on. But right now in this period, I'm kind of just enjoying those sort of like slightly more relaxed mornings.
Yeah, there's nothing like having a kid or some other time constraint that gets you to focus on what the actual urgent tasks that need done right now are.
Mhm.
And whilst obviously the likes of journaling and things like that do have merit, they become probably a little bit less important once there's time constraints there from family demands, and obviously work, and allow you to focus in on those times might mean that other things got go a bit of the wayside. Right, a few quick, what would you say, the classic quick fire questions that are written down, and had sort of adapted them to maybe suit what we talked about, and suit obviously knowing you a little bit better. So the first one was, if you had three people that you could take out for a coffee, like dead or alive, and just have a coffee and a chat, who would be the three people that come to mind?
Mm. Well, I have to say my wife first and foremost. She's gonna listen to this.
See that she'd be looking to come along for the interesting conversation
Yeah.
as well.
So her, um, trying to think, in terms of utility, but also like just general curiosity. It's got to be Kanye. Um, I'm gonna say Ralph Waldo Emerson.
It's good. That's a good shout. I've been thinking of that question myself, and those both names were in the running, but they ended up coming up, and as you will when you have more time to think, will come up with 10 other names, and you go, oh, I should have said those.
Yeah.
Ralph Waldo Emerson and formerly known as Kanye West would be a good shout. Yeah, interesting conversation would be what we had there between Ralph and yeah. Favorite country of origin for a coffee bean?
Gonna say Ethiopia, specifically naturally processed. From the Guji region, as you know,
Good.
Guji gang.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's got to be it. Espresso and filter.
that's niche. If there's three people that understand that reference, listen to this, they can message, and I don't know if there'll be no praise, but I would be surprised if there's any more than three people that understand what that was. Favorite football boot of all time.
Oh, that I owned.
Give me one that you owned and give me one that if it's different, you can give me a different
Yeah, I think it's probably both. Like I know it's cliche to say, but it's probably the Predator, Adidas Predator Mania,
one.
silver ones with the red tongue.
That's yeah, it's enough of a change from the usual answer to warrant it not being cliche.
Yeah.
Um, Favorite, if you can think of one, or most memorable training session or other athletic slash sporting event that you've been a part of.
Um, Most memorable is the one that we always come back to. It was like the defining moment. I think it was you know, probably a lot of people would say like, playing in a final that you of a championship that you've won, but the one that we always come back to, and I think is probably my favorite, is that it was a run we had one time in a Sunday morning in Lumpers up the mountain, um, where we were both probably, I think it might have been the same time that we touched on at the start, where we were both running hell for leather at the top, um, the whole way down. I think we were at the front, um, and it was the time where I was really really going for it. I was trying to beat you, and I think I beat you the week before, or something, maybe 1 week before that, and I was just giving it all. I was like, I'm gonna do it again, but you actually didn't let me. You were determined that time to be like, no, this isn't happening. Um, and I think you just about pipped me, and I can still vividly remember us coming around the corner, and I was like, this is where it's gonna happen. This is where I'm gonna
Yeah.
get ahead. And then you just found you just found something in you to be like, this, no, not this week.
Right.
So that was probably
Any
both.
any
Yeah,
o- any older brothers out there understand where I got that from? That's just
yeah,
you can't let's say whether it's a PlayStation game or whether it's a run up a mountain. There's if you're beaten in 1 week, you're not going to get beaten the next time. Whatever you have to find inside it.
yeah. So I think, yeah, that might have been probably not the beginning, but probably the first real defining moment of like, that's when you finally took the big brother status for sure.
I
Yeah, that was,
can't even remember can't remember that specific session, but I do remember when we were doing that for a few weeks in a row, and I remember those sessions were unbelievable because it was such a steep mountain that the run up was maybe 35 minutes and the run down was maybe 19 minutes.
mm,
So extremely dangerous downhill run, but those at the front were competitive enough that it was literally just sprinting downhill at like a 30, maybe 30-degree downhill for parts of it, which you couldn't have stopped if a car drove out in front of you. If there wasn't cars on it, but if
mm,
you probably wanted to, you couldn't have stopped or just had to fall. But the, the level of speed you were able to build up was unbelievable. But great challenging sessions. Definitely ones that I remember. And anyone who did them remembers them for good or bad reasons. Um, all right, your favorite book that you've read.
mm.
Maybe not. It could be your favorite, or it could be one that had the biggest impact.
Yeah, there's been a lot over the years that you almost forget. Um, and there's different books that have had probably a similar effect on me in different areas. There's ones that have had an effect for like creativity. There's ones self-development, business, marketing, everything else. Um, but if I was to put one down as the most impactful at probably the most important and pivotal time in my life, it would probably be the selected essays of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Because I think I was reading that. You introduced me to it, but I think I was reading that at like early 20s, mid 20s, and like trying to find some sort of direction in life for myself, and it's just one of those ones that I keep going back to. Um, and I just feel like anything it's something that hasn't really been mimicked, but it's also written from someone 200 years ago. And that thing we talk about of like the Lindy effect of like standing the test of time, and the principles within it can be applied, now. Same with something like Stoicism as well. But that book, I don't know, whatever way it was written, or maybe how it gripped me, or the depth of understanding I got from it and meaning I took from it was probably, I would say, the most impactful on me.
Yeah. Yeah. Self-reliance, one of the essays, and that is I would say, my number one piece of written text that I've gone back to the most and gotten the most from. It's a short essay, but dense with wisdom, things you could take away from it. Definitely one you can go back to over and over. Favorite piece of clothing that you own?
Clothing. Well, I tend to wear all black now, so it's all like they're all kind of the same at the
Mm-hmm.
minute. But piece of clothing that I haven't bought like two or three replicas of is you've seen me wearing it all the time. It's like a brown kimono. It's like a chocolate brown kimono. It just fits nice, makes me feel good. So I'm gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that brown kimono.
So I thought you were going to go with the easy slides or the foam runners. But the kimono probably gets just as much wear as either of them. Uh, the Would you have a favorite athlete of all time?
Favorite athlete. I was gonna say Ronaldinho, but probably David Beckham.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Beckham's
that's
a good option.
yeah.
Yeah, nice. Any particular reason for David Beckham?
Uh, I think it was because he represented something outside the sport. He was kind of like the first person in my lifetime that I seen. I was like, oh, he's like, it feels like he was like to me like the first personal brand, or like something you could do something outside your own domain. And almost like, yeah, I suppose because he was so expressive in his style on the pitch, but also outside the pitch in fashion, hairstyles. Obviously, I'm very limited with the hairstyles now, but in if you look back at any photos back in the day, I had numerous hairstyles. Um, and that was kind of like, it was almost like a permission slip for me. It was like, I see someone who's doing something that I want to do, and he gives you that, gives you that permission slip to be yourself, I suppose, be expressive. Even if you're in a team, you can still be an individual. And that was something that I always took with me and took from David Beckham, I would say.
Yeah, he definitely transcended sport as much as it's in sport, where he actually probably didn't get the praise doesn't get the praise for how good of a player he was because he had so many other things that he, I suppose, excelled at, or at least he was very well known for. And from you touched on personal brand there, to sort of ask the last question to allow you to sell your wares as such, or to make people aware of what you do, because we haven't touched on anything to do with it yet. But obviously you run a social media marketing agency where you help people, I suppose, take control of their own social media, or indeed take that off their hands completely, for small business or business owners. And you have done quite a bit of work on the stuff we've been putting out, and I can obviously highly recommend that. But if people want to see that, where would you like to direct them?
Yeah, so currently on Instagram, at empathy.marketing. Should be an email there as well if you fancy email instead. But Instagram is where you can find me. Plenty of content there to get stuck into. Plenty of free resources as well for anybody who is running a business on social media. And I'm only a DM away as well. If you want to ever hop on a call to discuss anything, if you're creating content on Instagram, doing any email marketing as well, very much happy to help in that regard as well.
Thanks for listening, and if you consider yourself an everyday athlete, whether you play sport or want to pursue other athletic goals, consider checking out the Everyday Athlete program at the link in the episode description. There you'll find what's involved in the program, testimonials from the lads we work with, and how to apply.